Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited for his first time to email camp. My buddy, the amazing Travis Hazelwood. He's presenting Kicked Out of the Inbox. Are you an accidental spammer? Give me some love in the crowd, ladies and gentlemen. Travis, how you doing today, my bud? What is going on?
Dude, doing well, doing well. How about you?
Oh man, we're having a lot of fun up here, having a lot of fun. But I'm so grateful that you get to be here with us. Oh man, lovely guy over here, my buddy Travis. We got to meet this past year at MOG out in San Francisco. Really cool guy, real cool guy. But most importantly, he's going to be giving you some amazing best practices coming up here in just a moment. Want a quick reminder to our viewership out there: make sure you put those questions in the Q&A tab. Should be in the upper right hand corner, right there, labeled Q&A. Make sure you put those questions in there and upvote the ones so we can answer them towards the end. But I'm gonna let my man Travis here go and take over. I will see y'all in the backstage. Travis, let me know if you need anything. All right.
Thanks, Thomas.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, today we're going to talk about getting kicked out of the inbox for being an accidental spammer. Real quick, I want to introduce myself. My name is Travis Hazelwood. I am the head of email deliverability at Ordo. Ordo is a customer data and multi-channel sending platform. I've been in deliverability for over 5 years now, working across 4 different sending platforms for email and supporting billions of emails a year with all my efforts. And on top of that, I am an amateur writer as well as a veteran reader. You can see some of the things I've written on deliverability, especially on the ordo.com blog. You can see the link there. Of course, there's my email, and then I try to post pretty regularly on LinkedIn to really humanize the deliverability topics that can be quite dense. So you can check that out there as well. So real quick, let's do a rundown of the agenda round for round. First, I want to make sure that we're on the same page when we're talking about what is spam. And to do that, we're going to do a quick overview of the history of spam at a very, very high level, just to help you see how it's evolved as its definition. From there, we're going to talk about doing a quick gut check to see, are you a spammer? Accidentally, of course. Round 3, we're going to look at some red flags to help you identify whether you may already be going into the spam folder. From there, we'll move into round 4, where we'll talk about how to get out of the spam folder and climb back into the inbox. And finally, we'll talk about some things that will keep this from happening again in the future and help you to maintain staying in the inbox moving forward. So let's dive into what spam has become. To do that, let's do a really high overview of the history of what has been identified as spam, or an email's fight against it. It's pretty generally known, at least in the email world, that the first unsolicited email was a scraped list of users at a particular network being sent an unsolicited email. It really angered everyone immediately, of course, but it also made millions of dollars and spearheaded the continuing issue with unsolicited emails being used, since it does technically work sometimes. From there, email has evolved around the mid to late 90s. Block lists against IPs were used, both internal and external, to help try to identify sources of problematic traffic. Of course, the use of ESPs made this very complicated. So the spam folder over time was invented, and it became more popular around the mid 2000s in order to help try to navigate the in-between, where some traffic might be not as problematic as others. So yes, the spam folder is a security tool that tries to meet that gray area of not outright blocking, but not outright delivering to the inbox. And then more recently, especially getting popularity in the mid-2010s, subscriber engagement and domain reputation has really led the charge in the algorithms of deliverability, where these old other things like block lists and stuff are still being used, but they are being rated with the subscriber engagement being the highest rated parts of the algorithm to help give a more finessed, a much more accurate inboxing experience. Now, because of those changes, all the way, especially at the end there with the domain reputation being based off of subscriber engagement, the actual definition of spam has evolved over time. The first two sort of pieces of spam or categories of spam are probably a lot easier to accept than the newer, more recent version category. The first would be unsolicited, obviously, that first one that essentially ever happened with email. The second is malicious emails. Of course, that's where you have bad actors sending phishing emails or trying to get you to download malware or anything like that. That's very obviously spam and problematic. But the more recent one that's really feels like a grayer terminology is irrelevant emails are now considered spam. And that is based off of this newer recipient engagement based algorithm. To really break that down though, what is irrelevant spam? I mean, it seems like that term is so gray and generic in some ways that it'd be hard to say like that's a category. Well, irrelevant spam really comes in on talking about content that may have been sent to opted-in subscribers, but for some other reason has become irrelevant. Things like content that's not asked for. That's where you get someone's subscribing for coupons, but then suddenly getting a newsletter that they didn't realize they would be pushed into or something like that. Content no longer engaged with, so that's where it was opted into, but over time it lost relevance, and so they're no longer interested. Of course, content that is offensive, you could have an opted-in list and you could send something that could accidentally or intentionally offend some people, and that could make that irrelevant. And of course, content that is annoying, that's something a lot of marketers don't really think about. In general, sometimes there's a sort of an acceptance that there's a degree of an annoyance with sales and marketing because of the need for persistence. But there's a fine line there because now annoyance can earn yourself the identification as irrelevant spam. In technical terms, it's content that earns either low or no engagement or outright spam complaints and intentionally negative engagement. For you to kind of conceptually humanize this, it's really easier to see it as content that earns either apathy or outrage. So with that in mind, let's talk about seeing if maybe you are accidentally a spammer. How do you know if you are that? Well, let's go. I've got 3 mini rounds real quick where I categorize these common accidental spammer tactics. And let's see if any of these kind of hit home with you. Round 3 tends to be the one I see the most. So let's see here. You can see the different categorizations. Of course, it can be multiple here: unsolicited, malicious, irrelevant. But look at some of these. Do you send cold emails to scrape purchase lists? Obviously unsolicited. Do you send emails that try to trick recipients without their knowledge? That could be malicious. Do you send emails to conference attendee lists where you're not the conference host, but you're someone who just attended and somehow got a hold of that list? That's considered unsolicited. Do you send emails to audiences from sister brands? Surprisingly, that can be considered unsolicited, not just from my angle, but from the recipient's angle when they suddenly start receiving stuff from a brand that they didn't even know was a sister brand or has any relationship to who they already opted into. Do you resubscribe to recipients without their permission? Obviously, that makes things unsolicited, but it's also irrelevant. You're no longer relevant, and you're trying to continue to send them content that they're not interested in. Do you make it difficult to unsubscribe? Once again, you blocking their path to essentially getting away causes your content to no longer be of interest to them, and you're sending to uninterested parties, especially if you're doing that as a common practice, whether accidentally or intentionally. Do you use subject line tricks to induce engagement? I would consider that irrelevant. Do you change the sender info to trick recipients? That can be considered not only irrelevant, but malicious due to the activity there. And finally, here's round 3. And I apologize, I will get to your questions once I get through the slides here. I can get a little off track there, and I want to make sure I get through these real quick. So here are the ones that I find that happen the most. So let's pay closer to attention here. Do you opt in subscribers to all content types? Like I mentioned earlier, by not being specific and being general with whether they get opted into everything instead of just the thing that they think that they're getting, that can cause some irrelevance with your content and hurt your email reputation so that you become an accidental spammer. Do you ignore your subscribers' engagement history when you're building out these campaigns? Well, I know a lot of senders have done that for a long time and it's been fine, but it's no longer being fine. It's time to pay attention to how engaged these subscribers are and how often you're sending, especially to the unengaged subscribers. Do you use giveaways to build your marketing audience? That one is very surprising. Now, there are ways to do this, and I've talked about it in my blog, that can help this bridge that gap of irrelevance. But a lot of times there's just a simple giveaway or a simple thing like gated content, and then that is used to essentially opt into all content types, sometimes with the subscribers' awareness, sometimes not, but oftentimes forcing that opt-in, it causes quite a bit of irrelevant content to be sent to subscribers and earn some of these accidental spammer signals. And finally, do you have large gaps in sending to recipients that are sometimes they don't receive for over 3 months? So basically, it's very easy in the email world. A lot of people forget that it is easy to forget who you've opted into and who you've not. And especially when you're receiving so much unsolicited traffic, which is out there, it's very hard to remember whether you did or did not intentionally stop receiving emails from someone and then suddenly to start receiving from them. It causes things to become irrelevant. So I don't know how you did there, if you found anything that sort of struck home, like I said, or if you passed the test there. But the major blow here, that it's not even just earning outright problematic responses to spam complaints. A lack of regular engagement from your audience can make you a spammer now because of the way the algorithms are working. All right, got some great questions coming in the chat and in the Q&A, and I'm excited to get to some of those. But let's move into spam folder red flags real quick. So let's take a look to see how to know if you're falling out of the inbox already. Here are a couple red flags that I like to highlight that are especially easier ways to help you know what's going on. And these look at these email engagement data that you're going to have on whatever platform you're using. And of course, we've got a wide audience probably of different types of senders, B2B, B2C, even industry specific, can see different things. So I really tried to build this to help give you clearer signals that you can use. So for instance, watch out for positive engagement drops. I'm talking about opens and clicks, whether that be open rate averages trending downwards over time to the point of dropping by 10% or more over time, or if your open rates are already below 18%, that's not a hard metric of 18%, but that's somewhere that I would really identify that it's very likely that there is some sort of list health issues going on. There's a lack of engagement attention, engagement history attention for your subscribers when you're building out your campaign audiences. So I would definitely suggest keeping eyes out for at least those signals. Click rate drops for averaging over time, of course, of 1% or more from what they usually are, or if your normal trend is below 0.5%, I would say that unless it is very common for you to send traffic that doesn't have click focused content, I would say that, yeah, that deserves attention for improvement and is likely a red flag that someone somewhere is beginning to spam filter you. Rise in negative engagements can also be an indicator. Now, here I talk about unsubscribing complaints. Unsubscribes are not technically negative from the receiving mailbox provider side. They do not see that as a negative signal. But because feedback loops that provide complaints are not a general principle, and there's a lot of providers that don't provide that, we as senders have to use unsubscribe rates as a data point of possible negativity, a disconnect where content, either irrelevant content or misaligned content expectations are happening. So I would suggest looking for unsubscribe rate averages above 1%, as well as complaint rate averages above 0.1%. So, and the key here too is that you don't want to just look for negative engagement rise to see if you have an issue, because if you see those drops in positive engagements, that means that less people are likely seeing it. So you're probably going to see a drop in your negative engagements. So ideally, if you're not seeing those negative engagements going up, you want to make sure that the positive engagements are still high, so that people are seeing, and it's just they are engaging positively. And finally, conversion drops. Now, I know attribution models are not perfect, just as all the other engagement metrics are not perfect, but it's important to know that any data point here is important. And I have seen several times where it looks like nothing serious is really happening, and then customer has that data point of attribution conversion data has dropped, and so that helps us know that there is something serious going on for sure. In the end, the spam folder isn't your enemy. This is an important point. It's a friend telling you the hard words you need to hear, that you're just not doing your potential best. We're not just talking about your potential best as far as whether you're oversending or whatever. We're talking about even for your marketing performance potential. And the spam folder can help not only improve your activities to help you get out of it and get into the inbox, but also follows principles that earn more engagements, which can earn more conversions. So let's talk about how to get back into the inbox. So when we want to approach the situation, whether you've actually fallen out now, or if you're someone who's scared that this could happen in the future, the first thing you need to do is start with what's it going to take to make this right. There are two foundational, really, they come together, these two activities to do the main foundation, which is to clean up your list. The first thing you want to focus on your list of subscribers is to remove those without permission. Explicit and clear consent is needed for your audience base, and any of those that are not meeting that expectation needs to be removed. That's removing those who were from a sister brand, like I talked about, any addresses scraped from a public source, or even just outright purchasing addresses. Those need to be removed from future sends in order to earn your way back into the inbox. From there, you'll also want to set up CAPTCHA on your sign-up sources. Every single sign-up source, any way that subscriber data can be added into your audiences, you're going to want to secure that with either Google's reCAPTCHA or Intuition Machines HCAPTCHA, any sort of CAPTCHA that can help you protect from spam bots, which can poison your deliverability by either adding fake addresses, which can earn you poor reputation with mailbox providers, or they can also add real addresses. And I know that it feels like your content doesn't deserve that attention, but we see oftentimes just having a vulnerable form is enough to earn these sorts of attacks. So you want to do this to make sure that your audience is squeaky clean and protected from any outside effects. From here, we're going to get into the actual meat of now, how are you going to start sending in a way that gets you out of the spam folder and into the inbox? You're going to want to start by sending to the most recently engaged subscribers. That is going to be those who have signed up or engaged with an email in the last 90 days. You're going to want to send to them for a little while until you see your stats begin to improve and see inboxing as a higher likelihood. From there, you'll then move up to the less recently engaged, and that would be those whose last engagement or sign up was in the last 90 to 180 days. So the last 6 months now are all being sent to. Once you have sent to them successfully for a while and you're seeing healthy engagement, you can build out a re-engagement campaign to focus on the rest of the viable audience, which is those who have signed up or engaged in the last 6 to 12 months. These are people that you're going to really want to be focused on, being especially intentional. You do not want to just add them back into your normal content. You want to send very intentional content. From there, you're going to also want to make sure to sunset the long-term unengaged, those who haven't engaged in over a year. I know that can be hard to think about, but at that point, if they haven't engaged, just think about how many emails you've sent to them. You can see that it really tallies up to show a lack of interest. If you do this right, I know it's hard, but if you do it right, you can win big. Focus on the engaged for a while. When you're talking about these different ramp ups, I'd say give at least 2 to 4 major campaign sends to your audiences in each of those groups. That can really help you maintain that healthy sender reputation as you get your way back into the inbox. Another thing you're going to want to do to make sure this works right is pay attention to the engagement data as you're ramping up. If you start to see that as more visibility happens, more complaints or negative stuff kind of happens there, you're going to want to make sure to stay where you are and then review any sort of content misalignment or opt-in confusion there and try to correct that issue before moving forward. And as always, it's important that you're very intentional with your content decisions. Whether we're talking about your general campaign sends or the actual re-engagement to the older, unengaged audience, you really need to be intentional about how you're meeting that need to earn their interest. And I can tell you from my history that 99% of the time, it works every time. I know it's funny, but it's true, and this is the way back into the inbox. So now let's move forward into how to own the inbox moving forward. This is really the end here, and we'll get to the Q&A. It's important to remember it's much easier and cheaper to stay in the inbox than it is to get back into it. Obviously, if you have to earn your way back, you have to send to less people, which can earn a lot less interest and a lot less conversions, especially even the fact leading up to the spam, you realizing you have a spam folder issue, you are losing stuff slowly over time, losing attention and purchases. So let's look at 3 keys to staying in the inbox real quick. Number 1, honor preferences early. Make sure sign-up sources and audiences align with content expectations. Make sure sign-up sources are secured with some form of CAPTCHA, and build a robust preference center and make it accessible in every campaign. Number 2, engage subscribers meaningfully. Automate personalized nurturing content wherever possible. Think your welcome emails, your new content opt-in emails, all the onboarding emails, things like that. Personalize the bulk content with dynamic blocks wherever able as well. So I'm not talking about personalizing the entire email, but your biggest pitch, your earliest pitch in the campaign content, try to personalize that based off of interests. And then finally, prioritize triggered content over bulk sends wherever possible. It's very obviously seen again and again that campaign content that is sent based off of an action of the subscriber earns higher engagement rates than just general sends. And finally, maintain your list proactively. You're going to want to build engagement-based audiences to have a clear understanding of what's going on. You're going to want to automate the subscriber lifecycle check-ins. You don't want to wait till they get really unengaged to re-engage. Let's go ahead and build an automation to check in with them early. And then let's automate that sunset process to make it easier for you to let those subscribers go. By honoring preferences early and engaging subscribers meaningfully, while also maintaining your audiences proactively, you're utilizing an email strategy that gives subscribers respect, gives them rewarded curiosity, and it gives them an empowerment that allows them to stick around without regretting it. So key here is to remember an engaged audience is an inboxing audience. Ready for questions?
Question time. Question time. Let's see here. All right. Travis, looks like you were digging through there. Was there anything that was popping out to you, man?
Yeah, so someone asked about a retention tool. I haven't looked at that, so sorry about not being able to answer that. Let's see here. In this talk, you're very specifically talking about mailing lists, how this relate to system emails, one-off emails that are relevant in the inbox. Yeah, transactional emails, things like that are triggered. I can see how it can be really hard to understand how you would sort of filter those down, especially as certain providers. I know, oftentimes MSN or Hotmail, Outlook can be very difficult, regardless of if you're following best practices. So, um, so it's important to keep an eye on things here. One
Mm-hmm.
of the things I advise is trying to separate your more transactional traffic with maybe its own subdomain. That can help protect it against bulk issues. If you still continue to have issues with that traffic, I suggest, of course, you could separate by IP address as well, but I really look at your opt-in process, the process for why are these having issues like that. It usually, a lot of these algorithms, especially with the sort of B2C mailbox providers like Google and Outlook and stuff like that, they can be a little more sensitive to particular mail streams. So is there an issue where you are getting complaints, you're getting negative feedback to that? You want to look at, like I said before, sign up sources. You want to look at, is that content actually aligning with their expectations and things like that.
100%, 100%. All right, bud. Let me see here. Looks like we got time for about 1 to 2 more. So let's make these count. All right, let me see here. And if you see one that you like, call out their name so I'll throw it up on the screen here for everybody. Let's see. Thank you for all these amazing questions. Right, right. I like this one. This one comes from Isabel. She want to know, what are the benchmarks we should use as we send to engage segments?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if ideally, benchmarks can be really confusing. You can go across the different industries or different sending platforms. They all have their own benchmarks for industries, and they don't match. But the best thing I'd say is always start with your healthiest you. So you start with your normal, what you know is healthy. And if you're not at least reaching that, then you want to reach that again until you start to move forward in your engagement segments there. I know that feels a little vaguer, but that is really how it is. Some senders have a highly engaged audience and some don't, and that's okay. You just have to work with those limitations.
Love it, love it. You heard it from here. You heard it here, y'all. You heard it here. All right, let me see. Let me go and stop sharing that question. All right, man. Last one. Let's see. Trying to scroll through all these amazing questions. Just below. Oh, I just love the one that just said thank you. That's a good one right there. We appreciate the thank you. We appreciate the thank you.
Maybe I can do this quick one here. If negative engagements disappear, does that mean block listing? So that is a great question. It could be block listing, but a lot of times block listings can earn you bounce back messages. That's what I say. A lot of the time, that's where you're going to see that. I know there's situations where that's not the case, but with a lot of the bigger senders, if you just see your negative engagements disappear and you see your positive engagements just dropping dramatically, it's more likely an indicator that you're going into the spam folder and it due to algorithmic reasons on their front. So especially if you're sending to Gmail, Gmail does not lean on a lot of external block lists. And if you do get on Gmail's block list, they will bounce back your message. So a lot of times, I actually wrote a recent blog about IP block lists and how people immediately go to that when they start to see issues like this. And most of the time, it's less likely that you're on a block list, and it's just that you need to improve your sending practices following what I actually did in this presentation. So yeah, it's a great question.
Love it, Travis. Love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we got today for Travis. I want you to give a big round of applause for being here today. My dude. Travis, it's so good to see you, man. I hope I get to see you sometime before the year ends, or maybe I get to see you at a conference or at MOG anytime soon. But ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause for my man Travis. Travis, where can the people follow along with everything you got going on in email, my man?
You can go to my LinkedIn, which is just my first and last name, as well as I have my blog on the ordo.com website. If you go there, which is also linked, you can read some of the stuff I'm talking about. And I update that once a month.
Awesome, awesome. Travis, man, it's so good to see you. Like I said, I hope I get to see you before the end of the year. But thank you for stopping by and taking time out of your day to be here with us. And we seriously appreciate you, man. We thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. See y'all.
All right, everyone, take care. All right, we're going to move on to the next session featuring Ashley Rodriguez. I'll see you over there in just a second.